3 years ago, I called the original KLIPSCH RP-8000Fs an absolute steal. Last year, KLIPSCH updated the entire reference Premier line, including the 8000F, so it is time to find out, is the sequel better than the original? Now, from the outset, the 8000F Mark II doesn't look dramatically different from the original. Unless you peer around back where you're going to find the updated binding posts and Atmos connections, you might not even be able to tell the two apart. Remove the grills, you're going to find that the Mark II has a new, larger Tractrix horn waveguide, one that goes edge to edge for greater high-frequency focus. Inside, you're going to get a 1-inch titanium tweeter that is mated to two 8-inch cerametallic woofers. Now, the three drivers plus the speaker's new dual rear-facing Tractrix port give the speaker a reported frequency response of 35 Hz to 25 kHz, which is roughly the same as the original. Impedance is rated at 8 ohms with an in-room sensitivity stated to be 98 dB. Again, very similar. Much like the original 8000F, the Mark II is very amplifier and receiver friendly. We tested our pair with 3 different AV receivers, Sony's new flagship 7000ES and their new entry-level AN1000, which was super impressive, as well as Anthem's MRX 740. Our home theater setup included KLIPSCH's RP-500 C-Center and in-ceiling speakers, as well as our B&W subwoofer and the Sony SW5 wireless sub that works exclusively with Sony receivers. Now, for stereo listening, the Yamaha RN2000A and the Audiolab 7000A got the nod. Everything we used performed great. In other words, I don't have a favorite today. None of the pairings resulted in a higher noise floor either, which is great, especially considering KLIPSCH's higher sensitivity that sometimes results in audible hiss if you have a noisy amplifier. And I have to say, setup was pretty eye-opening. You would think with 2 large ports, these speakers would need just a little bit of space between them and your front wall to sound their best. But when it comes to placement, the 8000F Mark IIs aren't picky. For a large speaker, the 8000F Mark II is pretty room-friendly. Whether they were 6 inches or 2 feet off our front wall, the response remained largely the same. Toe-in will affect treble attenuation positive or negative. Straight ahead, the treble is more linear. Pointed right at your listening position will produce a slight boost in the high frequencies, which brings out an added sense of detail to most recordings. I preferred ours slightly toned in, but not pointed directly at our listening position, but feel free to experiment. So let's dive into that frequency response. A quick sweep 20 to 20 reveals a, oh my God, hold on. Let me zoom out. There we go. That's better. As you can see, much to the chagrin of many who work very hard to convince you otherwise, the 8000F Mark II measures pretty flat in room, which is kind of the point of its design. From about 200 Hz on up, the 8000F Mark II is respectable. Maybe not the best we've seen, but far from the worst. And while there are a few small peaks and valleys, most don't exceed plus or minus 3 dB. In other words, you probably won't notice during everyday listening. But if you zoom in, I bet I can convince you otherwise. Below 200 Hz, there is some boost in the bass, but like with the Martin Logans we just reviewed, it's very easy to deal with and responds very well to EQ and room correction. But with boring measurements out of the way, I love how these things sound. I think the Mark IIs are even better than the originals. Similar to the second gen 600Ms, they're just more polished and refined top to bottom. Now, the 8000Fs don't quite have the reach nor the grip down low as the POLK R700 or the Martin Logan XT F100s. And for true full-range playback, the 8000s do require a sub. The POLKs play lower and in some cases may negate the need for a subwoofer, whereas the Martin Logan's woofers have greater texture and detail when driven correctly. The 8000s, however, have greater dynamic snap, immediacy, and punch in comparison to the other two. The KLIPSCH nails the point of impact just right and without a lot of fuss, sounding just as present and snappy on the lesser Sony receiver as it did on the costlier Yamaha one, something I can't say about the POLKs or the Logans. You could really feel the raw impact and dynamic presence on Metallica's Enter Sandman and A Perfect Circle's The Noose. As for the mid-range, it's not completely neutral. Sure, its response is more or less linear, but there is a bit of liveliness due to some emphasis on some resonance in the cabinet, which means there's going to be just a little extra energy present at some frequencies. This gives vocals, especially female vocals like Natalie Merchant, more presence and a live sound-like quality that I actually really like. Is it the most accurate? Not according to the measurements, but personally, I just really love that more live sound. Which brings us to the treble. Similar to the Motion XT F100s, the 8000's tweeter does not appear to roll off much, if any, until well after 10 kilohertz, meaning detail and intelligibility are high on the KLIPSCH's list of attributes. In direct comparison, the 8000 was actually just a little bit softer and more mild-mannered than the Logans, though with lesser recordings, both have the ability to become fatiguing. If you want a speaker whose top end will be agreeable with all genres of music, nothing can match the POLK R700. But all that said, I really like the 8000's treble response. With the speakers not quite pointed directly at me, I experienced excellent detail, air, and decay, and even when driven by a receiver, I never found the highs fatiguing at most volumes. In terms of soundstage and dynamics, these speakers image very, and I mean very well, disappearing within a large and cavernous soundstage. The soundstage may be large, but separation isn't laser etched, as instruments can and do get a little bit fuzzy around the edges and can kind of start to encroach upon one another. Center imaging is good, though as you move off axis, it is going to drift a little. It's not bad, but speakers with less specialized waveguides, for example, Focal or Sonus Faber, they tend to do just a little bit better with respect to dispersion, but they also interact with your room a lot more, so that's the trade-off. Dynamically, forget about it. KLIPSCH has and will always excel when it comes to dynamics, and the 8000F Mark II is no different. And as part of a home theater, few speakers manage to be as exciting as KLIPSCH. I love watching movies and gaming with the 8000Fs. Time for the comparison lightning round. So, how do the 8000F Mark IIs compare to the likes of the POLK R700, ARENDAL's 1961 towers, Triangle's BOREA 9, and because you're going to ask, the Martin Logan Motion XT F100 towers? Well, I prefer the 8000s to the ARENDAL and the Triangle speakers, though I will acknowledge that objectively speaking, the ARENDAL 1961 towers are better, even in our tests. So why pick the 8000s over a, quote, better speaker? Well, because the KLIPSCH are more fun. I enjoyed myself more when watching the same movies through the KLIPSCH than I did the ARENDALs. The ARENDALs are an achievement, make no mistake, but I was always listening in order to appreciate them versus getting wrapped up in the music or movies, which is kind of the point. As for the Triangles, they are good, way better looking than the KLIPSCH, but the 8000s are the more balanced performer, and at high volumes, they hold up better than the Bro 9s. The POLK R700s lack the ultimate top-end extension of the KLIPSCH, which for some of you will no doubt be a sticking point, but for those looking for arguably the most ideal all-rounder, the R700 still has no equal at its price, at least none that I've heard. The KLIPSCH can totally hang, and with certain music, specifically driving rock and electronica, I prefer the 8000F Mark IIs, but given my taste in content, which runs the gamut between exceptional and what some of you are going to call absolute crap, the POLKs are the more versatile speaker. And the Martin Logan XT F100s, sorry KLIPSCH, but you do not pull off the upset here. They're simply not as good nor as refined, but at less than half the cost, I would not fault anyone for going with the KLIPSCH. And finally, for you existing 8000F owners, you thought I forgot about you. If you're thinking of upgrading or you are a bargain shopper looking for a deal, here is the ultimate face-off. Original versus Mark II. Sorry if this hurts the wallet, but I would buy the new Mark IIs over the original 8000Fs. As good as that speaker was, there was room for improvement, and the Mark II delivers. I love what KLIPSCH is doing with each generational change. They're not remaking the wheel, they are refining it. The 8000F continues to be an easy speaker to recommend. Haters be damned, because next to the R700, I'm still not convinced there is a greater value in all of home audio. So that's it. That is now my take on KLIPSCH's new RP-8000F Mark IIs, but I am very curious what you thought about them.
Okay, well, before we get into that, let's just get this out of the way, because I already know people are like, well, what about this and this and this and this?
Oh, I missed a comparison?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I don't really think you did, but, you know. Okay, first, number one, Focal 826 towers. Your thoughts?
Focal, I think Focal and this speaker are going to have a lot in common. I will say the Focal is going to image a little bit better. It's going to have that stronger center image that isn't going to drift quite as much as you move off axis. It is going to be actually probably a little bit more boosted or lively in the treble. Not by much, but a little bit. Probably more in line with the Martin Logans. Bass-wise, probably a bit of a trade-off. I can't say about ease of setup or proximity to the front wall which is going to be better because it's been so long since we had the 826. I will say I am shocked that the KLIPSCH is as good as it is close to a wall. I don't recall Focal being that way. So if you need a speaker that is very flexible with respect to placement, the KLIPSCH may be the better bet. It is the bigger speaker though. So keep that in mind. And the finish options of the Focal, have to admit, they are better.
If you care, I would pick the KLIPSCH in this instance. Okay. Similar to Focal, just, you touched on it briefly, but go into a little bit more detail about the Lumina 5s from Sonos Faber.
Okay. Lumina 5s, you're going to spend a lot more money.
Yeah, those are $3,000.
Those are $3,000. So you're talking about $1,000+ added investment. The Sonos Fabers are better built. They look nicer. It is a more compact package in comparison to the KLIPSCH. I'm going to say that, and even looking at the measurements that we took in this room, the Sonos Faber has a little bit more resonance down low, so the bass is actually a little bit less refined, which gives the speaker a little bit more of a broader, warmer sound or tone compared to the little bit more exacting KLIPSCH. If the KLIPSCH could look like the Sonos Faber, take all of my money, the channel's closed, because my budget speaker would be the KLIPSCH, because it looks like it's Sonos Faber, and my reference speaker would be the Martin Logan, and I think we're done here.
I still pick the Lumina 2s with the subwoofer over the 5s.
That's the best speaker in the Lumina line, hands down.
Yeah, and I would choose the KLIPSCH over
the 5s.
The 5s.
Yeah.
Just my 2 cents. Okay, and lastly, one of my favorite speakers, the Q Acoustic Concept 50s, which are also $3,000, so same price as the Lumina 5s.
The Concept 50s, again, like the Focals, they image a little bit better. They disappear just a little bit better. They are exceptional off axis. So if for whatever reason you're like, I need a 2-channel or even a home theater speaker that lets me sit like 9 yards off center, the Concept 50s may be a better fit. They do not play as low. They absolutely require a subwoofer, whereas the KLIPSCH, if you're not an absolute just 20 hertz aficionado, they provide plenty of bass for me, to the point where I can listen to the 8000F Mark IIs without a sub, and I don't feel the least bit robbed, especially with like electronica music. But the Concept 50s, I always miss that kind of bottom half or whole octave without a sub.
Okay. I still love those speakers.
Oh, they're great. They're great.
I still probably would choose those. I think that they are just some of the easiest speakers to live with.
They are like the POLK R700s. They tend to do very well with everything. So
yeah, totally agree. Okay, my turn.
Your turn. All right.
I love these speakers. Okay? They are freaking great.
Yeah.
And listening to them reminded me why I love that KLIPSCH sound so much. There is just something about their sound that is really hard to replicate.
Yeah.
Maybe I think the Martin Logans are a very similar.
There's some similarities.
But yeah, these are so much fun. I really love them.
Yeah.
I think that they are some of the very best low-level listening speakers I think we've ever had.
Yep.
Seriously, fantastic.
Yep.
If you have if you have problems with understanding dialogue, these speakers are going to be a godsend. To be honest, my biggest issue with KLIPSCH, and I think I've talked about this before, is their lack of finish options, especially with their lower cost lines. That these vinyl finishes, I'm over it. I'm over them. It's so unimaginative.
Well, I was going to say, I think for Reference Premiere, finish is one way that you really can differentiate. And it's not like they have to cannibalize or even go after the heritage stuff, because look at the KLIPSCH, the 5s, and now the 7s and the 9s. Those all have more of a decor-friendly feel to it. And if they would bring that light oak finish from the 5s to this, you're done. That's kind of like it.
I mean, I'd pay to wrap these in our Cornwall finish in a heartbeat.
Yeah, put them back in the box, send them to Arkansas, and just be like, work your magic, because I'm keeping them.
Yeah, they're really, really fun.
And I would totally do that if I wasn't worried that it would create a chain reaction among the viewers going, why can't I get that?
Totally. I mean, very similar to whenever we show footage of the R700 in white.
Yeah, which was a mistake.
We got by accident.
Yeah.
And to this day, people are upset that they can't get that white finish. I totally
understand why.
Yeah, and I would be willing to bet if we contacted our rep at KLIPSCH and said, hey, I want these covered, they might say no.
Yeah.
For that reason. Okay, last question.
Last question.
And
okay.
this is, you may hate me for this because I'm totally going to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
If we had reviewed these last year, would you have still picked the R700s to win?
Ooh. She means our speaker of the year and I think our product of the year. For me, in mixed usage, I'm not going to lie, the R700s do eke out the win. They're not as amplifier friendly as the KLIPSCH, and they do have roll off in that tweeter. So for those of you that are like, oh, the R700s lack sparkle, the KLIPSCH. But between the goalposts, given the vast, wide variety of content that I know all of you partake in, the R700s are the more versatile speaker. So they still would have won, but I could have made a case for a joint win. I could have. These, if you were like, hey, you now have both of these in house, which one are you, Andrew, keeping? I would probably keep these.
The KLIPSCH?
I probably would, because when it's for my own personal enjoyment, and I said this in our Cornwall theater video towards the beginning of the year, when it comes to my personal enjoyment and a non-analytical side of me, there's just something about what KLIPSCH does that I still just can't quite put my finger on, nor do I want to part with. And I have spent more time in front of these speakers for my own personal enjoyment over the last several weeks than probably any speaker we have in-house, minus the Logans. I don't think you're going to be disappointed either way. Just know it's going to come down to the tweeter and that little bit of liveliness. The POLK is a little bit more subdued, a little warmer, because it's got that little extra bottom end, and that tweeter does roll off. So fatigue's not on the menu, period. Not to say that the KLIPSCH are fatiguing, because I personally don't find them to be fatiguing unless I'm listening at like 110 dB, in which case pretty much any speaker is going to become fatiguing at that volume. I will say this, for low-level listening, you did bring this up at the start of the conversation. For low-level listening, these all day.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult decision. Mm-hmm. Had we reviewed these last year, I don't know what I would have. I probably would have fought hard for maybe these winning, mm-hmm. but I completely agree with you in the points you've made mm-hmm. as to why the POLK R700 is just more versatile.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the KLIPSCH more,
mm-hmm. if
I'm being completely honest. Mm-hmm. It's just more of the type of sound that I prefer.
Yeah.
And for me also, when it comes to home theater and dialogue clarity, these are better for me.
Yes.
Than the R700. And I've said this a lot mm-hmm. in the past. Like, it really, you have to know what kind of listener you are.
Absolutely. And
just be okay with it. It's very easy to get persuaded mm-hmm. by the community that what you prefer is wrong.
Yeah.
So you just have to be confident in what you like.
Yes. Right. Well, that is now our review of KLIPSCH's brand new RP-8000F Mark II. What'd you guys think of it? Let us know down in the comments below. And my question of the day for you is pretty simple, and that is twofold. Is the Mark II better than the Mark I, in your opinion, if you've heard both of them, or if you've taken the plunge and bought the Mark II, or did you take the value proposition and get the Mark I? And second, which speaker would have been your speaker of the year now that we've talked about the 8000F Mark IIs? Would it still be the POLK R700s? Should it have been something completely different? Or would you have given it to the 8000F Mark IIs? Let us know. Let's have a conversation. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that KRISTI left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here. And both of us thank you all very, very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and that is it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.